2,500 years ago, a Chinese general wrote a 6,000-word military manual. He probably never imagined it would end up on the bookshelves of Wall Street traders, NFL coaches, tech CEOs, and yes, your uncle who just discovered LinkedIn. Today we're breaking down The Art of War, not just what it says, but why a book about killing people became the best-selling self-help book nobody admits is a self-help book. First, quick myth bust. We don't actually know if Sun Tzu was one real guy. Historians argue it might be a compilation of military wisdom from the Warring States period, credited to a legendary general for authority, kind of like how everything gets attributed to Einstein online. What we do know, this was written during one of the bloodiest, most chaotic eras in Chinese history. 7 kingdoms clawing at each other for survival. And out of that chaos came something strange, a war manual that spends less time on how to kill your enemy and more time on how to avoid fighting altogether. That's the first thing that separates this from every other war text of its time. And it's why it's survived 2,500 years. Here's the line everyone quotes but almost nobody sits with. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Sounds like a fortune cookie, right? But unpack it, and it's actually a brutal, unsentimental idea. War is the failure of strategy, not the proof of it. Sun Tzu isn't glorifying combat. He's terrified of it. He saw war as expensive, unpredictable, and something that drains a state even when you win. So the entire book is structured around one obsession. How do you win before the battle even starts? That's why he spends entire chapters on deception, making your enemy misjudge you, terrain, choosing where you fight before you fight, intelligence, knowing your enemy better than they know themselves, timing, attacking only when victory is already close to certain. This is the part modern readers skip past to get to the inspirational quotes, but it's actually the most radical part of the book. Sun Tzu is telling 5th century generals, glory is a trap, efficiency is the goal. Okay, let's get concrete, because this book is more system than poetry. Sun Tzu opens with what he calls the 5 constant factors, the checklist for whether you should even go to war. 1. The moral law. Do your people actually believe in the cause? 2. Heaven. Timing, seasons, conditions outside your control. 3. Earth, terrain, distance, position. 4. The commander. Wisdom, discipline, courage. 5. Method and discipline. Logistics, organization, supply lines. Here's what's genuinely impressive. Strip out the sword and shield language, and this is basically a pre-modern SWOT analysis. Cause, environment, positioning, leadership, execution. Every startup pitch deck built in the last decade is unconsciously running the same checklist. And that's the real reason this book escaped the military section of the bookstore. It's not really about war. It's about decision-making under uncertainty with limited resources against an adaptive opponent. That description fits a battlefield. It also fits a merger negotiation, a courtroom, or a breakup, honestly. Now, let's not turn this into a hype reel. There's a colder side to this book that the Sun Tzu for Business Bros crowd conveniently ignores. He talks about spies, 5 different kinds in detail, including sacrificing your own agents to feed false information to the enemy. He talks about destroying an enemy's alliances through misinformation. He's not just advocating strategy, he's advocating manipulation as policy. Which raises the real question this book forces on you. If you apply this thinking to your career, your relationships, your negotiations, are you being strategic, or are you just being manipulative with extra steps? Sun Tzu never really answers that. He assumes you're the state trying to survive, not the person on the other side of your strategy. That's worth sitting with before you start quoting this in a job interview. So why has this outlived literally every other war manual from the ancient world? I'd argue it's because Sun Tzu wrote principles, not tactics. He doesn't say, attack the left flank at dawn. He says, know when your position gives you the advantage and only act then. Tactics expire. Principles don't. That's the same reason a 2,500-year-old text gets cited by military academies, obviously, business schools teaching negotiation, athletes talking about competitive psychology, even divorce lawyers. Unironically, it's short. You can read it in an afternoon. It's dense. You'll reread it for years. And it respects your intelligence enough to give you a framework instead of a rule book. My honest take? The Art of War isn't really a book about war. It's a book about restraint disguised as aggression. A manual that keeps telling you the strongest move is often the one where nobody notices you moved at all. Is it flawless? It's ancient, it's occasionally contradictory, and half the business wisdom crowd has stripped out its context to sell you a mug. But underneath the hype, there's a genuinely rigorous framework for thinking clearly when the stakes are high and the information is incomplete. If you've read it, tell me in the comments which chapter actually changed how you think, because I guarantee it's not the one people quote on Instagram. And if you want the next breakdown, I'm doing Machiavelli's The Prince next, which is basically this book's much pettier cousin. Subscribe so you don't miss it.